Good stuff.
Good stuff. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third login sessions. And this week we're looking at the whole area around an hour and a half of folklore, in particular kind of a very loose bracket, which I suppose many of us who grew up with these stories firsthand were kind of put into a bracket of just that, they're only old ghost stories. So I'm Mick Fortune.
Aileen Lambert.
And we're your hosts for the evening. So don't mind us, we're here in Corragreag in County Wexford, and now and again we've got a screen in front of us, and there's people pinging and popping to come in here in a waiting room. So every now and again you'll see our eyes switching over left and right just to admit people into a room here. So tonight we've got an hour and a half planned. We've got 6 storytellers from around the country, from Armagh to Antrim, from Kerry, from Wexford, and from Newfoundland as well. Since we started, there's been a great contingent of people from Newfoundland, because I suppose Wexford and Waterford and South Kilkenny, I suppose it's our nearest neighbour in many respects. And I'm just going to flick around the room because I'm going to move. I've got 3 screens in front of me. I can see Kenneth Wickens there. Is there anyone else from Newfoundland? Put up your hands there if you can see us. Anyone else from Newfoundland? Oh, well, Beverly's there.
Hello, Beverly.
Hey, Beverly.
We met Beverly
I
last
do.
year.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah.
Hey, anyone else from Newfoundland there at all? No.
And not everyone has their video on.
Yeah.
But that's fine.
Yeah. One thing we're really conscious of is just security, and people not coming in and doing things and saying things that they shouldn't be saying and doing. So everyone is muted, and if there's any bad behavior which we see, we're going to knock off your screen ASAP, right? So don't let anyone ruin the night for all the people who've joined us. Last week we had traditional song. The week before that we had traditional music, and next week
we have recitation, poetry and verse. So it's lovely to see loads of faces on here that we've seen in the last couple of weeks, the music and the singing. But we've a great bunch of new faces as well, which is lovely. So we seem to have reached out to a new little community and network as well.
Yeah, and this whole thing is completely new to us, it's completely new to a lot of people. But the idea is when we work with tunes or with songs, it's very easy because you can pick someone, Seamus Brogan, for example, sing a song, Seamus will sing a song, next year go on to someone else and they'll sing a song. So it works really well. In this area around folklore, like my area, I grew up on the coast of Wexford, about 30 minutes drive from where I'm living now. And we grew up with folklore and stories firsthand, whatever. And half the time, like my mother or neighbours or people that we would know would never class themselves as storytellers. That people that might tell you a story, or they might tell you something that happened to a neighbour. Oh, a fella got lost in the field, or he was taken by the fairies, or the Banshee come after that one, after someone's house. So they never put themselves out there as a performer, but they do it privately. And Irish people, if you know Irish people very well, is that they won't come forward with stuff. I'm always wary of the ones who come forward with stuff. I kind of tend to avoid them sometimes when I'm collecting. It's actually the ones who don't come forward are the ones I'm always after. Mm-hmm. And just to even show you what you were listening to, I won't talk too much about ourselves, but just to show you, we've about 20 years of recording folklore here, mostly in Wexford, Tipperary, Mayo. Now these are all old DVD collections. There's about 5% online at the moment, right? When we get time in our lives, we'll put stuff up. We get around to doing it. A lot of it older people in Ireland, and also with younger people. So this idea that folklore is only resigned to older people, is stories are only resigned to older people, isn't the case, because young lads have the stories just as much as the older ones. And I suppose one of our areas of work is to work within schools and work within different settings to I suppose to give those stories and those give that whole space currency and let people kind of tap into it, and to realize that they've got control over it. Because I think one of the things which I've always said, and I've seen it for years, was I found a lot of folklore and storytelling was becoming a bit of an academic pursuit. And sometimes I kind of grew up, and my mother left school at the age of 14, and she would have had stories and beliefs and customs firsthand from herself from growing up, and like so many other people as well. So people have these things as they're real, and they mean something to people as well, and especially when you're talking with neighbours and things like that. So anyway, that's enough of me and what we said we're going to do. I can't help but think about. I'm thinking of Newfoundland, and there's 2 Newfoundland people here. One is Kenneth, and also I see where's yourself gone as well. Beverly
is not in front of the screen just at the moment.
Yeah,
there she is. Not far.
She's not far away. I'm going to unmute Kenneth Wickens, and I'm going to unmute Beverly as well. Beverly Kane. Hello.
Hello. How are you?
How's it going?
How are you getting on?
Beverly Kane.
Fine. How's yourself?
We're good, thanks.
Good.
Kenneth, can you tell us where you are at all?
I'm in the Ghouls, Newfoundland, yeah.
And we've been talking over the last couple of weeks here, we've been meeting, whatever. A lot of people, you've never been to Ireland, have you?
No, never in my life.
You were texting me there today. Where did your crowd come from at all?
Well, most of my crowd now, well, in Newfoundland or Ireland?
No, where were you told?
My family in Newfoundland, they're all belong to Renews. In Ireland, most my grandfather's side, they come from Mullinahone, Tipperary. But my forefather that came here married a girl from Kilkenny. And there was one on my nan's side. She was a queen. They were belong to Kilkenny. And the other two, I think, were Conway and Foley. I think they were from Waterford. And there was a baron down the line of them, and they were from Wexford.
Yeah, yeah. You were telling me before that your grandfather spoke Irish.
Yeah. Well, when he was a boy, he was his father hardly knew English. Now, when he moved to Renews from a place called Seals Cove, which is up past Cappyhaden, there is about, I don't know if you ever heard the Flora's Elric. It's a little bit past that, anyways. But that's when they moved to Renews as young boys, that's when they were encouraged to speak English.
And you were telling me before that he used to say good night to you in Irish.
Iowa is what they used to say.
Iowa. And I'm going to go over to Beverly Kane, because I met Beverly in St. John's May last year. Beverly, will you tell people what your mother, I think was, used to say on New Year's Day or New Year's Eve?
New Year's Eve, you'll throw out some breadcrumbs and you'd say, "Foagi a wilt more." And it supposedly meant to them, poverty walk out.
And that was Irish.
Yep.
Yeah. And Beverly and Kenneth, did you grow up with all the same kind of fairy stories and banshee stories that we had here in Wexford and Waterford and Kilkenny?
Well, there used to be the ferry break. David know about that. It was the ferry break that was up past Cappyhaden. Now the ferries in Newfoundland weren't giggling and farting and waiting on the end of a rainbow, but they were evil people. That's the stories that we grew up on. My cousin Esther Cal was supposed to be taken by the ferries.
What do you mean taken by the ferries? You got lost, you got taken?
She was taken by the ferry. There used to be a train go up on the back of Renews. And she was taken, she was only 9 years old. And the story goes that she left, when they come back, she went missing. And she was in perfect health. And when she come back, she was, the next day they found her on the end of the road somewhere. And she was bent up. And it was a medical mystery that it was like she was like it all her life, but the night before she wasn't. And they had to cut her barrel in half so she could lie in the rest of her life, so she'd have a chair to lie in. And supposedly that's what she said. The fairies took her. And at that age back then, they were they didn't know much about the dirty talk, I guess you can call it. And she knew all kinds of it. But that's what she claimed from the day she died, was that the fairies took her, apparently. Now, she died before I was ever born, but that was her name, Esther Cal. Her sister recently died.
Were you told, Kenneth, to take bread witches? I see another person from Branch here, Mallory, and going to mute you. Another Newfoundlander as well, all right? Mallory, how are you doing?
I'm best kind here this evening. I'm in St. John's, Newfoundland, Labrador, and it's best kind of a day. Someday I'm closed, but unfortunately I don't have a clothesline.
Now, the two people from Newfoundland, were you told that to take bread witches when you were going out?
Yeah, my grandmother especially in Branch, it was a big thing, especially around the woods. Take bread in your pocket, leave a trail behind you, or it'll keep the fairies away, stale bread. I also heard stories from my grandparents of if it's shocking, it's terrible seeing, but if a child was really ugly as a baby or as a toddler, that would be the explanation that the fairies took him and replaced him, and that's why they're such an ugly baby. But yeah, lots of fairy stories from around Branch. The whole fairy ring thing is a little bit new to me, but definitely a presence of fairies. And as Kenneth said, our fairies are mean little creatures.
Yeah. Well, our fairies in Ireland are pretty much the same. They're certainly not little Tinkerbells that you see from Disney. I'm just going to look around the room. If any is, and especially the Irish people, have heard those kind of stories of meddling with Raz. I see Richard Quincy there. And Richard Quincy, I'm going to unmute you for a second. Richard, you grew up out near me up in Ballygarrett. Did you ever hear from your father of men who meddle with a Ra or Raheen, as we call them, and getting bad luck?
I don't know about meddling, but I remember there was one over in Barnery and up beside Pat Donoghue's now. And I remember him always maybe slagging Pat. I'll take the trees off of that patch, years ago. And Pat, no way, like, you won't be getting them. It's beside Pat Donoghue's or Anne Donoghue's house there.
Pat wouldn't meddle with him.
No, geez, no. My father used to be selling sticks 30, 40 years ago. Pat had, you don't want the timber on that, you're never touching it now. And it was always a bit of a joke, you know what I mean? But I wouldn't say he would have took him anyway.
Yeah. The woman, for those of you who don't know, like where we grew up in our part of Wexford, we call them a Raheen or a fairy ring or a Raheen. Other parts of the country, they call them a Lissa or a Ford. But usually a Raheen with us. And the classic story is if you went in there and took sticks off and the sticks wouldn't burn, they'd go black in the fire, they'd hop out of the fire. And the usual thing was, and if you're told this story by anyone, they'll usually tell you 3 to 4 things that happened to someone chainsaw. All the old ones years ago were the classic ones of 2 men going down to cut down sticks off a Raheen. And one fella says, no, I shouldn't be doing this. And the man says, no, come on, don't be fucked, he says. So they'll go down and excuse the cursing lad. So he went down with the saw anyway, and he was cutting the bough off the Raheen, off the tree. And he looks up and he can see his house on fire. So he drops the saw and runs up back to the house. And when he gets back to the house is perfect. There's nothing wrong with it. So he says, that's a sign, get the saw and leave it, never touch it again. And that one that you were on about, Richard, that I remember meeting Anne Donoghue, Mrs. Donoghue, and she said she wouldn't touch a stick on that Ra, she said. And she said when she was even, said, you may think I'm mad, Mick, she says, but she told me this a couple of years ago, said, if I'm going in there to cut down any of the loose boughs around the outside of it, I'll talk to the fairies before I go into it. She always says that, yeah.
It's a stone throw from the house there.
Yeah.
The house is right beside, it's very close to it, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
it's interesting. I found it really interesting the way our fairy stories went to Newfoundland all the way over. Sean Doherty, do you want to say something? Hang on there. I'm going to mute you.
How are you going?
Good lad, go on.
How's it going, my village, good. My village here now in the Irish, it was Rhinashiga, and there's a kind of a different interpretation. The point of the stroke or the point of the fairies. And the stroke is in the river where the 2 lots of water meet. You'd often see kind of white foam on the water. But down at the corner here on the river, there's a place called the Sheeg Rock. And up a couple of fields away then, there was the Fairy Fort. And the whole area there, like my grandfather, they were very, very cautious of the fairies. They would not cross them. And I remember stories like where cows would go dry. Or they said the fairies stole the milk. But the same thing, they would not cross the fairies, or anybody that ever did interfere with a fairy fort. They never had a day's look for it. And like the old people all had this strong belief in the fairies. And even like there were some people, like, they claim to have seen them. But it's amazing there. Like, I've got to know Kenneth over the years of the connection there between Newfoundland and here. Like, my grandfather would never have called a big codfish a codfish. They were called Newfoundland fish. And there's so many words that I would hear Kenneth saying that I didn't hear for nearly 55 years when my grandfather and them were alive. And it was so alike, and the same way with the fairies. That, like, it's amazing now, to be honest with you, but they definitely was a strong belief in the fairies. And this area here, like, as I say, was very, like, between the name of the place, the Fairy Fort, and they had to stay to this day. But the funny thing about the Fairy Fort, when I was a child here, it was briars. And over the years now, it's more or less a ring of ash trees. But there was a healer came here a few years ago, and he was talking to Morris Doherty below on the quay, and he said, "Did something happen here?" "How was that?" says Morris. He said, "The funny vibe about this place." Oh, he said, "They built these grinds out in the river," he said, "to change the flow of the river." He said, "The whole place silted up and it all changed." But this man said he could sense that the natural was after being interfered with. And like the old people like would have that belief that when you interfere with nature like that, it puts everything out of kilter.
Yeah.
That'd be my little bit on it anyway.
And where are you, Sean, at all?
I'm in a place called Cheek Point, and in the Irish is Ryan Shiga, the Pint of the Stroke, or the Pint of the Fairies. That would have been, we're right across here at the meetings of the waters. Like we have the Sure and the Barrow coming down together, and then we have the Sure. The three rivers meet here more or less together, you know. So it was, even in mythology, like it's a place like that even was associated with the Fina. The Fina.
We ever told Sean in May to be a hare out in the field milking the cows in the field? Did you ever hear that?
Oh jeez, I did. My grandfather, like, it's interesting what you're saying. My grandfather, like, would never have been called a storyteller, but people would have came, and they used to call him yarns. I went down to Andy for a yarn, and there'd be yarns told about all sorts of things, and the hare drinking the cow, and also there about a fortnight ago, the skinning of the cow. Yes. When the winter go easterly or whatever, like they will hide on the hind quarters of the cow and start peeling off or something. I can still remember it. But the skinning of the cow, they'd call that time of the year.
That was the start of April, Sean, wasn't it? The first few days of April.
Start of April, about that time exactly, yeah.
The borrowing days, yeah.
Yeah, you know, and but the hare too. They never, like, in our house there was nearly always a hare. Believe it or not, my father was a pilot in Ross, and you'd catch the hares on the side of the road, a young hare, and bring them home. They nearly all got off. They go up in the knock, but there was always a great reverence towards the hare. You know, I know in other parts of the country, like Corson and all, but down around here, they didn't interfere with the hares too much at all, you know.
Yeah. Funny, my mother had that as well, Sean, and I'm going to look around the room. Was Mammy at home had one was that if a woman was pregnant and a hare crossed her path, she'd always put a rip in her dress. And this was their understanding. They always believed that the child wouldn't be born with a cleft lip. That was the belief that they had, the hare's lip. And I've recorded that's still really strong in the travelling community still. Some people would rip if they're wearing a dress, they'd take a bit of cloth off it, and the second the baby was born, they'd wipe it on the child's lip. Even I've come across even with people who would be off hunting hares, and any man whose wife was pregnant would never hunt a hare. That was a kind of a rule. I'm wondering, you held that for 1 second, Sean. Did anyone else ever hear any of those stories about hares and bad luck to do with hares? Put up your hand so I can come to you at all. I want to keep it as open as I could.
We do have his all on mute, so when he's asking that, do just wave and keep your hand up, because we have to go through 3 screens now to see his all and see if one of you does have your hand.
Seamus Brogan, I'm going to unmute you for a second. And if you don't have anything, it's all right. You're still on mute. Hang on there, Seamus, can you hear me?
No.
Yep.
You were outside in Escarty. Did you ever hear any of those things when you're out hunting years ago?
Only the story about the hare milking the cows. They reckon that the hare used to milk the cow. When the cow would go dry, the fairies would be after getting the hare to milk the cow.
Yeah. Was that like you or Sean?
Yeah, the cow would be dry, and the fairies would be after being involved in the hare. Like it's so long ago, it's hard to recall it, but it was definitely like the same story of the hare and the fairies. The cow would go dry, and there was also another story about the eggs. They lift the potato plant, and the eggs would be under the eggs would be where the potatoes would be. Now, they used to be said to be fellas robbing them and put the eggs, but why would you rob potatoes and put eggs either? But that was another part of it. And another.
Hang on there, Sean, for a second. I'll just explain to people. For those who don't know, there's a common thing. This is down your way, Sean, down in Wexford, Waterford, Tipperary, where you'd get eggs and you'd plant them in your neighbour's drills, spuds. And the idea that you would get up, usually around May Day as well, you'd plant them in their drills. And that was with the idea that their crop would be taken. They wouldn't get any spuds. You'd also put them in the cocks of hay. You'd also put them in the boundary fields. And the egg was, and it was really strong in Tipperary, South Tipperary. I got loads of records in South Tip with the eggs for some reason. And was that yours? Did you ever come across anyone who where it was done to, Sean?
No, but my grandfather, like as I said, he was a great storyteller, and I often heard about it. You know, it was not a nice thing for it to happen to yours. You know, and like the fairies were, my grandfather was very kind of he was into all this folklore and all that thing. And another thing that they had a great fear of was the black dog.
Yeah.
So would be after seeing a black dog, and there'd be areas where a black dog would be seen, and the raven was another thing. And to this day, I remember I was a wicked young child, and he went out to the back door and he said, "Oh, jeez," he said, "you hear the raven?" He said, "There's someone going to die."
Yeah.
And I suppose within a day or two, someone died, and it never left me. And it never left me like the ravens. And even now today, if I heard a raven around here, I said, "Jeez, there's someone going to die." And uncannily enough, I think there's something in it, because the same thing is there with the Native American people with the raven, that he's a kind of a messenger of death would be a strong word, but that's basically what he is, you know.
Yeah, hang on there 1 second, Sean, because there's loads of brilliant things there. One is the raven. I'm going to some of the Wexford ones now here. It'll be interesting. That we have a thing. Well, the Banshee is a classic term, right? It's known all over the country. Yeah. The Banshee, but down here in Wexford, and the Wexford ones will put vouch for this. We call her the bow. Right? And yeah, and the Waterford ones call her the bibe. You ever call her the bibe?
The bibe, yeah.
The bibe.
Oh, the bibe, yeah.
Now, hold that there for a second. I've known the ones in Newfoundland brought over the word the bibe. Do you use the word bibe, Kenneth, out there?
Well, the bibe, yeah, the bibe. My grandfather, the bibe was always was always spoken about, you know.
Yeah, but hang on a second, Kenneth, did you use the bibe?
Well, I never used it, but I heard the bibe. That's where I heard that. That's what they were talking about. Was like he calls the Banshee. There was another one too. It was the fetch that I heard, and 3 knocks. That was all for telling someone dying.
Yeah.
That was, but the bibe was one. That when I heard Sean say it there, so that's where that's belonged to.
Yeah, the bibe. That say if there was a child and she was really annoying you, the mother said, "Oh, go away, you bibe," right? And the bibe or the bow was an announcer of death. And down near us, again, Richard Quincy will probably guarantee. Did you hear that story from your father? That there was a local man in Ballygarrett shot the bow up in the high trees. A man called John Neal, the poor creator's dead now.
Yeah.
Did you hear that story?
I hadn't thought about it in years now. I barely remember about it now. All right.
Yeah.
John Neal, yeah.
Yeah, they said they shot the Banshee, and when they went up to pick up the Banshee, it was only a bird. And if you look at the Cú Chulainn statue in the GPO, the bird was an announcer of death. It was always the bird would come to announce death. She'd tap on your window or she'd follow you. This kind of shape-shifting bird, like your raven, Sean. I couldn't believe that the word bibe went over to Newfoundland. Well, then again, it's no surprise it went over to Newfoundland. Mallory.
Sorry, Nick. The thing here with the bibe. What I heard with the bibe was that it had to be someone with an O in their name, like an O'Brien or an O'Toole. That's the only one to hear the bibe. Nobody else. And that was for teller of death. So that's nobody else.
And Kenneth, when you were growing up in Newfoundland, did your neighbours, your father and all them people, would they sit around and talk? Would they say, "Jesus, Tommy Toole died there. I heard the vibe last night.
They wouldn't. Now, there's a wonder they didn't. They drank pretty good too, right? So there's a wonder they didn't. But
yeah.
But no, like most of them stories I'm hearing, like from old people. That's old people that you hear. They tell you this to spin the yarn, and they'll say, okay, well, this is what was going on, or they tell you a story about the ferry break, or they tell you down Torres Cove there was a lot of different old stories that they'll have their own pitch to them. But the fairies were a big one, and so were and all the old ghost stories, especially around shipwrecks and stuff like that. There was always a story, like stories about where my grandfather was from was supposed to be haunted the death up there with the shipwrecks and stuff like that. But most of that come from old people telling me, or father telling me a story about what they learned when they were growing up, you know.
Kenneth, you mentioned a word there, and I'm going to throw this word around the room. You mentioned the word of fetch.
Yeah.
Because we've that here in Wexford too. And I'm sure Sean down in Waterford, South Kilkenny, use the fetch, that word.
Fetch.
A fetch. No. Maybe it's only Wexford.
I can't remember.
Yeah, Mallory, do you have the word fetch down Branch?
Fetch.
How would you use a fetch, Mallory?
I've actually kind of heard it in two contexts, and one I kind of got in trouble in one of the contexts because I told someone, a gentleman I knew, I saw your fetch the other day, and he was highly offended. He was like, no, like that's a bad sign, like this is really bad luck. But I guess in my context, or the context I had learned it from, was that it's somebody who looks like somebody else. It's like the spitting image of them. So I had told this person I saw their fetch, but they took it as a sign of death, that they were going to die soon. Yeah. But yeah, I've definitely to see someone's fetch. And I just want to highlight on something that Kenneth had said too, about the bird knocking at the window. That's really bad luck. And a black dog too. That's a branch thing about a black dog being like an omen.
Yeah, I'm getting messages. Don't be afraid to send me a message if I don't see your hands. David Hines, you had your hand up there for a second. I missed you.
How are you? How are you? I was using the hand signal. Do you get them to use that? It's a handy yoke to do. It's a handy way of getting attention.
That's a shot.
Yeah, I tell you what, I live in Wexford town, and in the town, you mentioned it yourself, it was meant the bow or the Banshee. Now, where I live is in Davert Road, and Nicky Furlong was on, he's actually on the Late Show some years ago, and he mentioned that parts of Wexford, and he actually mentioned the Davert Road area, and because I remember my young lad was really interested in this all of a sudden when it came up. He was about 12 years of age, and but we had all that kind. Where I was born in Bright Street, like Bright Street would have been probably one of the oldest streets in Wexford town, and there was all sorts of things talked about. I remember you talked about the black dog, and my father used to talk about there was supposed to be a white rabbit. I think you had something on a talk some time ago, Michael, about something like that, because I used to think it was hilarious, because my father would be talking and I'd be wondering what the hell would you be afraid of a white rabbit or a black dog about, you know. But they used to say if you saw that at night time, get away, you know, don't go down that road, don't go by him, and all this used to go on. And I used to think that I didn't know they were making it up, but it was an awful lot of these stories around. And the same with ghosts. Like if you're talking about ghosts later on, there was a couple of things that happened in Bright Street that I'd come back in on, maybe, you know.
Yeah, the black dog thing is interesting, lads. That seems that travelled from Germany down through England, Cornwall, Wales, Ireland, Scotland, over to America, and obviously Newfoundland and Canada as well. Like Kenneth, like David, when you hear me here, yeah. Oh, Beverly as well. Can you hear me? Hang on, we're moving around the screen here. Hold on. Yeah, Aileen's going to unmute Beverly. That black dog thing. Our black dog story was people would describe him the size of a calf with big fiery eyes on him, the size of saucers. And he had a big fiery tail. He'd breathe fire and he'd come after you. That's the kind of one we'd have. It wouldn't be a village where this black dog wouldn't be seen. Was yours the same, Kenneth, at all? And your black dog?
I never heard that one though. I heard black cat, but never heard that one.
Yeah. Beverly, do you hear about a black dog?
No, No, not the black dog doll. But you were talking about ravens. With us in our area here, it's crows. So if you saw a crow, you would bless yourself.
Oh, brilliant.
You know, because that was a sign of something. And my husband has a bird story, so he's just going to pop in there for a second.
How are you doing, Michael?
How you get on, boy?
Good now.
This is a true story now. It happened a few years back. We were in the country. We had a cabin in the country. We used to be in there a lot, rabbit hunting. So anyway, there was 3 other guys with me, and that night around 9 o'clock, after we ate our supper, we turned out the lantern, and you can imagine in there everything was pretty black. So just as we turned it out, there was a knock on the door. Boy, we all jumped out of the bunks, you know, thought there was someone at the door. I went to the door and not a soul there. So we were all a bit puzzled about it. Anyway, we got back into the bunks and we went to sleep. So the next morning, before daylight, we got on to go again. And just as daylight was breaking, on the window. And holy God, we said, what is it? And when we looked out, there was a woodpecker. And he pecking on the window. So anyway, the boys were getting ready, their grub bags and everything to get ready to go after the rabbits, go the next morning. I said, it's just as well for one of us to go home. And my brother Charlie was with me, and he said, what's the reason he wants to go home? I said, I'm telling you, there's someone after dying. He said, no, don't be getting on so food. He said, I'm telling you now. Well, he said, you go on home. He said, and see what's time to go. And now it's a nice walk. It was just about 3.5 hours walk back out to the community here. I said, I'm going anyway. So when I came out and got the harbour in view, where I could see the harbour, I could see the flags half-mast. And I came on out and came home, walked right on down the harbour then. Came home to my father's there, and I said, Father, what's going on? I said, the flags are all half-mast. He said, your Uncle Ned died last night. I said, what time did he die? He said, about 10 after 9. And that's about when the knock come on the door. So there's the story for you, know?
Yeah. The bird, when you mentioned, yeah, this announcer, that is an interesting one. Like my mother at home always said that a robin, she always said she heard the bow when certain neighbours died, right? A couple of neighbours and relations died, she always said she heard the bow. And she'd always said a robin would come into the house and be a sign of death. That's a common one, right? But you won't believe this, lads. I remember my mother died in 2017, June 2017. And a cousin of mine, for some reason, or Paul O'Brien, Mammy died that morning, 5 or 6 in the morning. And Paul, I met this cousin of mine around 11 o'clock, and she came in to say, sorry, your mother died. I said, you won't believe this, Mick. She says, so the robin called into the house this morning, around this morning when I got up, and I said, will you go away or that? She says, so I'm not telling you a lie, she says. She came in and she hopped around the table, and she never calls in, she says. And so she hopped around the table, and so I went over and said, said to me, it was your mother said, come and say goodbye to me. And she went over, she picked it up, and she held it in her hand, and she said goodbye to my mother. And she let the bird out. And I said, will you go away or that? I said, talking. And she said, I'll show you. And she took a photograph on her phone. And Aileen was with me.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, she told it like, and it was so natural because it's exactly the folklore that your mother would have had.
Yeah.
And so Paula really made the connection really strong, you know, and had her on her hand and said to her, his mother's name was Nan, said, see you now, Nan, and then let the bird off. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's funny, in times of death and things like that, we try to find reason and understanding with the world around us. You know, we see things, we hear things, or we feel things in different ways. One thing that I couldn't get over, Beverly, before you mentioned, which I can't believe as well, a Wexford, well, an Irish person at all would go mad to see one magpie, to trip over themselves in one magpie, and we'd be looking for the second one to bless ourselves or spit in our hands or to wave the bad luck away. One was bad luck, 2 good luck, whatever. Now the queer thing was, when I was in Newfoundland, you don't have magpies, but you have crows. So what they did, I was watching them, I was asking around, and then I put 2 and 2 together. I said, you know what they did? They basically brought the folklore over with them, which is, our magpie folklore, and you put it on to poor old black crow instead. Yeah, it is. Yeah, because using the black crow, and you see one black crow is bad luck, isn't it? And 2 is. Yeah. Hang on there, Kenneth. Hang on there, Kenneth. And let me Kenneth here. Kenneth, go on.
One for sorrow, 2 for joy, 3 for a girl, 4 for a boy, 5 for silver, 6 for gold, 7 for a story that wasn't told.
Never to be told.
And you don't have magpies there.
No.
Does that make sense to all the rest of you?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And the queer thing is, there were no magpies at all in Ireland until about 1680. Until they said under a dozen. I did a thing with the National Library a couple of years ago. A dozen magpies blew into near Baldwin's town in South Wexford. And some people said they went down their Ladies Island, and they were the first magpies ever to come into the country. And that was the folklore then. And Solomon Richards wrote an account. He came in with Cromwell. He was stationed in Wexford town. And a neighbour of mine called Billy Walker, some might have known him. Billy was up in Ballyedmond, up in North Wexford. And he said that there'll never be peace in Ireland, Mick, if there's a magpie left in the country. That's what he said. And we could never understand it, couldn't make sense of it. But years later, 10, 15 years later, I came across Solomon Richards' account back in the mid-90s when I was in Limerick. And Solomon Richard had an account, and he wrote an account saying, the natural Irish much detest him, saying that they'll never be rid of the magpies once these English magpies remain. And he basically landed in Fortinbargy, which were the English baronies of Wexford, and moved up into Gaelic North Wexford and brought with him then the superstition and the folklore. Listen, I'm looking around the room. I see some of the people I've asked to join us to tell us stories here. I see Steve Lally, I see Joe Brennan, and I see Jack Lynch. Can I start off, actually? I'm going to go back to you, Kenneth, in a while. He's all okay, lads, by the way. Yeah.
Well, this guy here, no.
We knew this particular night would be an unusual night. It's not like song or music. It's loose, and that's what's kind of okay about it. If you're all okay with that, that's the nature of it. That's what's lovely about it. Now, I'm going to go over to a man called Steve Lally. And I met this man years ago in Limerick in about 1995 or 1996. And Steve, will you tell the world where you are at all?
Well, how are you doing? How are you doing, Michael? Aileen, how are you doing? Can you hear me?
How are you? Yeah, we can. Yeah, good stuff.
Good. No, well, I'm originally from County Kildare, as you always like to remind me of, Michael, you know.
Yeah.
But you'd be pleased to know I'm actually living now in South Armagh, so you can't say anything bad about that because you'd be asking for trouble. So I'm in South Armagh now, under great storytelling country, John Campbell, Michael J. Murphy, and Mick Quinn, and all the boys. So that's where I am now. So there you go.
You were saying you had a lovely story you got from, it was Kevin Danaher story, was it?
Kevin Danaher from County Limerick. And it's a well-known story, but it's a story I tell. I have my own sort of twist on it, you know. Yeah. But it's a lovely wee story about a spalpeen. So I'm going to have a bit of crack with everyone because I do a lot of storytelling with children in the hospitals and schools, and I say to them, what do we say at the start of a story? Once. What do you say?
Upon a time.
Very good, yeah. But I need your help now. So can everybody point to themselves like this, right? And repeat after me. It wasn't in my time.
That's
very good. Now point to the person next to you, but don't poke them in the eye and say it wasn't in your time. Oh, very good. Now hold out your hands in front of you like this, and then you say, it wasn't in your mammy's time. And then you put your hands on your hips and you say, it wasn't in your grandfather's time. And then put your hands in the air and you say, but it was a great time. Oh, very good. And all the houses were thatched with pancakes, and the walls were made of penny loaves, and those walls were whitewashed with buttermilk, and outside the little pigs ran around with a knife and a fork, sucking their backsides, squealing, eat me, eat me, eat me. There was a boy called Tom, and Tom was a spalpeen, and he lived a long time ago. They were going about 200 years ago. And it was a time when my grandmother says, when you had nothing, you had nothing. And if you wanted anything, you had to work for it. There was no such thing as a handout. Now, you see, long ago, people that didn't have a bit of land or a trade or a skill or a bit of livestock, well, the only way they could make a few pounds was to hire themselves out as workers. And the old name for them was spalpeens. They were itinerant workers that travelled around the country looking for work. And they'd have out hiring fairs as well. And these poor creators would go and hire themselves.
Hello, Steve. We've got a pause in South Armagh, lads. Come in, Lally. Hello, Steve. Bugger. He is not coming in. Hang on. Oh, lads, the fairies are in the system. Can y'all hear me, by the way?
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't hear me. Okay, some people are on mute as well. We'll come back to Steve in a while, right? There. Actually, come here to me. I'm going to go over to Kenneth Wickens, right? And Steve will try to connect. Kenneth, you were telling me you had a story. You were with regard to Wexford and Newfoundland. What was that story you had?
Oh, that's right. In Renews, there's a place called the Crossroads, and there was a Devil's Rack, they called it, years ago. And there was supposed to be a hoof in that rack, and it was supposed to be haunted by the devil. And they used to put dynamite around it. They were blowing everything around it but the rack. Now, the priest that was in at Renews at the time came, I think, 1957 when he died. He was from Wexford. It was Father Charles McCarthy, and he was also known as the Mansioner. That's how they pronounced Monsignor, but it was the Mansioner. Everybody feared him. He was supposed to have holy magic. Now, that's what, and he was after doing some strange things. They were after curing people and different things. So anyways, the boys, they only had horses then, so they'd be driving down on their horse and they'd stop by this rack and it'd stall. And what they'd have to do was get this rag and put around the horse's head and put the rosary beads. So the horse would pass the rack. And this was going on for a spell. And apparently the Mansioner came down. And when he stopped by the rack, he put the blindfold on the horse, and same thing with the rosary beads, and he crossed it. Now, going along there's a river. And so he got off and he blessed the rack and banished the devil. And some say he banished it up the river for 100 years. So when is he coming back? I think that was a scare tactic now, but some say that he banished it for good. But he told the boys to go down with the dynamite, and when they did. Now all of a sudden, this rock blew to smithereens. But this Mansioner, he done a lot of things. That's where he's from. And when I was talking the other day, and I found out about the Barons, I was looking for. That's what I was looking for, where his birthplace was in Wexford, but I couldn't find it. But he was from Wexford, and matter of fact, the McCarthy's in Renews apparently were descended from Wexford too. My grandfather's first cousin, Paddy Iron, he was a McCarthy. But yeah, he did it. He had boats and everything. There was a story of a boat went up, washed up the shore, and the boys couldn't get it going out at all. And he came along and blessed it. And apparently, after he blessed it, he said, "Boys, give it another try." And up it went like a feather and out in the water. They were going to burn it.
Wow.
But this fella that's where he was from. He was from Wexford, and he was supposed to have holy magic. And now he was crooked too. Crooked as sin, apparently.
There was a funny one that you say about, yeah. When you mention about horses, and I look around the room, see when anyone mentioned this. The classic one we'd always have here, and I come across it around the country, and probably Sean Doherty will jump in here as well. Horse would be going along a stretch of road, and the horse would stop. And no way could you get that horse to go. It could be at night time. And you'd have to unyoke the horse and bring the horse back around. And then when you go back around the long way home, and you'd be cursing the horse. And the next day you'd find out there may have been a bridge blown up ahead of you, or there may have been an ambush, there may have been something on. Yeah. And also, I've come across another one in Tipperary where a horse will spot if a place has changed. If you drive a horse down by a road 100 days in a row, it'll notice everything in that ditch, in that everything along the road. But if you put a yard brush out, maybe outside of the wall, the horse will stop because it'll spot something different. They've got a great sense. But one of the ones I remember coming across in Tipperary was something like yours, where a horse would go to a certain stretch and it wouldn't go any further until the man with the horse would say, "Morrigan Bryan, I done no harm to you. There was a man killed there years ago." And then the horse would go on then, carry on. Did you hear anything like that, Sean Doherty, down your way?
Yeah, I heard there was a story. There was two stories I heard about a horse. One was a horse was used to going home a certain way, and no way would the horse pass this particular night. Would not pass, and whoever had the horse bet the horse till the horse came along. Anyway, I went out the next morning, and the horse was dead. And the house that he wouldn't pass, there was a person after dying in the house that night. The horse wouldn't pass. And the other one then that I heard my grandfather talk about was a woman, a widow woman over across the river from us. I think her name was Conley. She had a house full of children, and she had a mare, and the mare was foaling, and the mare was having trouble foaling, and she had no one to call. She had a house full of children, and she beseeched the husband to come back and help her to foal the mare. And the mare, he did come. Now this is the story this old. He did come back to her, and he told her, "Don't ever call me back again." Now that was passed down, and even to where it was supposed to happen, I could even tell you. And that was always told. All those things were all passed down about the horse, even to the horse that wouldn't pass. Yeah, they said he was a white horse. There's a rock up in the Ross River there. It's called White Horse, and very like similar, I suppose, to the Native American way of naming things. Around here, a lot of the rocks around the river, they'd all have names. You know, like the half-tide rock and the yellow rock and black rock and all those kind of things. But there'd be all kind of superstitions and kind of stories attached to all that kind of stuff. And like, I suppose there's only like since television came in that all this is dying out, because like talking to Kenneth there and yourself, like we would never have known what a back garden was one time. Everything was a haggard. Yeah. And if a fella was sick, or it was a poor old day of fishing, it wouldn't be called he was poor or to sick or anything. To be angish. Yeah. To be an angish old day, or the poor old devil is angish if he was dying, you know.
Yeah.
And like there's so many words there that seems to be used in Wexford and Waterford and Newfoundland that they haven't a clue when you go a few miles up the country. They never heard of the word angish.
Yeah.
I've heard asked a lot of fellas up the country, did you ever hear the word angish? Wouldn't have a clue what it is.
Yeah.
You know?
I think we could do a Newfoundland, Wexford, Waterford, South Kenny one another night. Do you know what? Come here to me, Sean. I've noticed that Steve and Liz and Joe Brennan are here, and they're all here with us. And we'll run over to the lads now. And Jack Lynch is here as well. I don't want to keep the lads. So come here to me at all. Liz Weir, can I come to yourself? How are you doing?
Good, thank you. Yeah, fine. Hello from Cushendall in the Glens of Antrim.
Hey.
Oh, very good.
Good, lots good stuff. We're literally, Liz, we're having a chat and a ramble. We're meeting people we haven't met before, and we're talking about things that we're all kind of interested in. And one of the things, you probably saw this in Antrim as well. Someone, as Sean was saying earlier on, like my mother and all them, they wouldn't be classed as storytellers, as professionals, but to be able to tell you a yarn, you know, that kind of way. Oh, probably the exact same in Antrim too. Of course it was. Yeah.
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 Surely.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I mean, where we live, there's very strong Irish folklore. Probably the last native Irish speaker here in Glenarthglen in the 50s, you know, so there's a very strong Irish culture here. So we have Tivera, the Fairy Hill down in Cushendall. I sort of term it as Fairy Central. And people down here wouldn't cut down a fairy tree in any circumstance. They wouldn't go into a fairy fort, a fairy rath. People still believe that. Still have a great belief in banshees. My own brother saw one. So, you know, I can tell you a story if you want me to, or I can chat. I don't mind what you want to do.
Yeah. Do you have a story? Like, did you have like the common one in Wexford? I think it was other counties as well, is to warn children. Or if you found the bow's comb, the banshee to come after you that night, crawling and bawling at the window. Did you have that up in Antrim?
Oh, well, the banshee certainly would call I think the comb, you know, they always say, my brother said he saw her wailing with her long hair, but yeah, there's loads of stories about that. But I was going to tell you a story about a different kind of fairy woman that men should look out for in particular. Can I tell you about her? We had a great storyteller up here, a woman well known to Jack Lynch, and Steve would have known her. Her name was Sheila Quigley. And she told me this story about the Banshee is a fairy lover. If she sets her eye on a mortal man, that's him gone. He's away off with her to the land of the Shee. There's still women about like that, but this was the fairy kind anyway. But a young fisherman was coming home over the cliff tops near Ballintoy here in County Antrim. And he was followed by a Lananshee, sighing and crying, and he knew if he looked into her eyes even once, he'd be gone. So he stood stock still, and she sighed and she cried, and he paid her no. And then off she went. So away on he went home, and he saw her off to the side of the road burying something under a tall standing stone. He went home and he put salt in one pocket, iron in the other to ward off enchantment. And then he went back and dug under that stone, and there was a chest full of gold, fairy gold. So, do you know, he brought it home and he thought maybe she'll give up. But no, night after night she came sighing and crying and bundles. He thought, well, she'll give me no peace. Maybe if I get married, she'll leave me in peace. Now, there was a girl called Nancy, whose father had a pub, and he liked him. He proposed, she accepted, but when they went to the father, you'll not marry him. All he's got's a scattering around mountainy sheep and a thatched roof, poor shelter in a winter's day. But then Randall mentioned the gold, and when the father saw the chest of gold, the eyes came out and stalked. He said, listen, that's treasure trove. You could get into real bother with that. Listen, after that, you marry my daughter. The match was made. So he married the girl and he brought her home, and the wailing started outside, and she said, what's that? Shh. Only the church. He was a handsome young man, tall, black curly hair, long black lashes, broad shoulders, narrow hip. Young men like him and were and still are as rare as hen's teeth. So they got married, and after a while she got used to the noise. But one night she had to go and look after her father. He was sick. And here, next thing, Randall came home from his work, slumped down and fell asleep. But all of a sudden was woken up by a wailing noise and looked out the window, and face to face, he was into the face of the fairy woman, the Lananshee. He was bewitched. He had to head off with her to the land of the Shee, and he had to stay there with her for 7 long years. So to him, it's just like one night. And you know, when he came back to his own house, he thought he'd only been away the one night. And he peeped in through a window, and there was his wife sitting. She was rocking a cradle. And there was another man in his seat. He walked in, he said, Nancy, I'm home, love. She said, get out of my house, old man. It's me, your husband. Oh, no. Oh, if you could have seen my husband, such a handsome man. He was drowned in the sea 7 years ago. I waited 5 years before I married John. And Randall walked over to a mirror above the fireplace, and he saw he was looking into an old man's face. His black hair had turned pure white. His eyes had a haunted look on his face. And when he looked in the mirror, there looking back was the smiling face of the fairy woman. He screamed. He ran from that house. He was never seen again. As for the gold in the box, when Nancy's father opened it, all there was a handful of copper beech leaves. For they say it would nearly be better for a man to be drowned in the sea than to look in the face of a fairy woman. For the face of the fairy woman is lovelier than a dream, and her song is lonelier than the seabird's call. That's my story.
Nice.
Lovely. Lovely.
Now that was despite the man coming to deliver something to my house in the middle of that. So we managed all right there. He knocked at the door and went away. So we're all right.
Are you sure that's all it was now? A knock at the
It
door.
could be, do you know, it could be. It could be. And I have a big dog here, and I think we looked at the dog through the door, sent the man away anyway, didn't disturb us. So that's the story. There's still people who can tell you stories about banshees, but the Lananshee might know from the song My Lagan Love. There's a line in it goes, like the lovesick Lananshee. So that's the story from Sheila Quigley.
Yeah. Seamus Brogan commented about the Lananshee. Yeah. To tell me this, Liz, up your way. We'd have down around Quare, and thinking around Wexford town as well, where we are on the east coast of Wexford. We'd have loads of places near Glasgow. The mermaids were always seen there, where there were seals seen. But local lads would call themselves. Did you call themselves a name like that up your way? No.
Cell dog was the other one.
A cell dog.
No. Selkies would be men in the land and seals in the sea, the selkie, but some people call them the silky seal or the selkie, and you have those all down the coast of, North America, the coast of Scotland. They're very plentiful, but no, we don't often have that many here about that.
One thing I just reminded me there when you were mentioning about someone coming back, this thing of a fetch. I'm going to go back to my Newfoundland people again for 1 second, right? I'm going back to Mallory or Kenneth if they're there, or also Beverly. Beverly as well. I'm going to mute you, right? Kenneth, are you still there?
I'm here, yeah.
Yeah, Mallory McGrath as well. When we were in Branch, Mallory, we were told a story about a man who drowned by a neighbour of yours, and he reappeared. She wouldn't move. Did you hear this story? The husband drowned, and you were there. Remember, it was Margie was telling us. Margie English was telling us her Eva's father. Eva's mother's, her first husband, he drowned, and she wouldn't go back down to the house where they lived with the children. She moved away from the house when he drowned. But one night he appeared to her and said it's okay to go back down, and she went back down then, and she started her life fresh again. A few people told me that in Branch about a person appearing. Just thinking of your story there, Liz, it just kind of dawned on me of someone coming back a year later or 2 years later. Yeah. David Hines, you were telling me you had something there with your story in Bride Street in Wexford. What was that? Was that a fetch story?
No, well, actually, it was to do with there was oftentimes ghost seen in Bride Street, because, as I said, it was one of the oldest streets in the town. I suppose it was probably inevitable that I myself lived. It's actually not there anymore. There's a small block of flats there now, but I used to live almost at the top of the street, by the church railings, and that's where I was born. Now, I myself, when I was small, I don't know, 7 or 8 or something, but I was sick at the time, and I thought twice during, I don't know whether it was near the same time, but I thought I saw a ghost in my bedroom. And one time it was a man, and another time it was a woman. And because I remember seeing I could see through this person. I could see the wardrobe behind. Now, I was very nervous, and yet for some reason that night I wasn't nervous. But I remember telling my uncle about this, who was he was home on holidays, and he was a fella that had been through the war and everything, so he wouldn't be frightened by a ghost or anything. But he told me he had seen, he said it was my granny he had seen in that house. So, but that was only one house. There was an awful lot of stories in that street. Sure, when you be growing up that time, you wouldn't have much in the way of television or anything. So you spend the whole night talking about ghosts and telling each other stories you'd be after hearing from your father and people like that, you know. Yeah. But a lot of that, of course, as you know, would be after dying out now. But it was interesting. It was twice that I remember that. But it's so long ago, I often wonder, did I imagine I'd seen something or not? But anyway, that's my story anyway for the night.
Yeah. And I had Beverly there unmuted, and Beverly and Kenneth. Did you have those stories at all down around in Newfoundland of ghosts coming back, or ghosts of people might have drowned coming back? Did you ever hear anything like that?
No, but I do have one where, now, my grandfather's sister moved down to the States, down in America. And the one that lived next door to him was a bowling from Calvert. And apparently there was a boat came in. Now, I mean, you wouldn't get in that close to Renews because where's too was shallow, but it was a ship. And then the stern of the ship was, I guess, my great aunt. And she was waving to him, and she knew that it was, he knew that she died. That apparently that was her way, that apparently come in on the ghost ship to say their final goodbye. They were apparently close friends. So that's the closest I can hear to that.
A ghost ship would come in to say goodbye.
With the passenger on board would be the one that died and waved their final goodbye to their friends. And he knew that when she waved to him, that was that she was dead. And then a couple of days later, they got I guess the mail. They said, okay, well she's dead now, right?
There's a powerful story. Seamus Brogan probably know it, and some of the Wexford ones might know it. Joe Brennan might know it as well. There was a ship called the Pomona. It was an immigrant ship, left Dublin, went to Liverpool, and it left Liverpool on the way to America, and it hit the Blackwater Bank. Off the top of my head, it was 1867. It was April, I think it was 1867. And the crew bailed out, captain stayed on board, hit the Blackwater Bank, a sandbank off the coast of Wexford, and she ran aground. So the crew bailed out, and they left all the people locked down below, and the rising tide, everyone was drowned. And the newspaper reports at the time had it that I only found the newspaper reports later on, but the folklore was what we had. The song was remembered, the stories remembered through a song, but the local folklore has it in that spot that the cases were tragic. When one man opened the hatches, a woman came out with her 6 children tied to her. 400 Irish people, most of them say 99% of them are Irish, all drowned, right? And fishermen, when they're out fishing for herons, when the sea is getting rough on that spot, they'll always say you'll hear music coming up from the water. And when you hear music coming up from the water, it's a sign to get off the sea and get back in on land. And I was only looking at the newspaper reports at the time, and they said that there was actually a piper and a fiddler provided music or entertainment for the people on board when it left Liverpool. And that night, I think it was that night or whatever, many hours later on, that's when it hit it. So there's that story. Another one up near Castletown, up near North Wexford as well, was the same story again of these ballisters, they called them. They said these ghosts, when men would be out fishing, they'd hear other fishermen taking in their nets, and they'd know then that was a sign to go in to get in off land. I'm going to go to back to, I'll come to see Lally in a while. I'm going to go to Joe Brennan in Wexford here, because Joe, how are you getting on at all?
Not too bad. And yourself?
We're good. We're sorry we're having a rambling conversation here, but I hope that's okay, is it?
That is.
Good.
Rambling across the water and back, huh?
Yeah, it's allowed, yeah. Can you tell people where you are?
I'm in Wexford town.
Yeah.
And you were talking about 2 things there about, well, Davy Hines mentioned about the Banshee and Davit Road. My own father had told me a story about they were playing cards somewhere around there in a house back, what would have been, I suppose, in the 40s. And there was a screech outside, and it was the Banshee. And as Davy said, around Davit Road area became well known for Banshees. And the other one was the Fetch. I came across, the first time I ever came across that was in book of County Wexford Folklore. Dermot Murherton. And there's a wee story in that about the Fetch in Wexford town. And this person, a young person, was coming back to the house and saying, "Oh, I just saw, can't remember the name, up the road, and they must be better." Yeah. They'd been sick in bed for a long time, and the parents were looking at him and said, "What are you talking about?" And then they realized what he had seen was the person's fetch, which is, to my understanding, it's the same, looks exactly the same as the person, but they're coming to take them away to the far side, across the threshold into the afterlife.
Yeah, that fetch word is popular up where we grew up in Ballygarrett, Joe. It was the same thing. And say if you saw someone, you'd say to someone, "Jeez, I saw you're the fetch of someone," meaning you're the spitting image of someone. Loads of accounts of it, and it's interesting the way it travels in Newfoundland. And Joe, what you do, like Steve and Liz and with the Jack and all here, professionally, you tell stories, you go to libraries, you do festivals, you do different things like that, don't you?
Travel about, get around, good fun. So to be it's stories from everywhere, really. I would tell stories from Ireland, from Wexford, but from anywhere. That's a good story is a good story, and then of course stories travel, so they appear everywhere, and similarities, and and it's I would travel the same as the others around Ireland and abroad at times as well, and it's a great privilege, to get to share stories and bring them to people and keep them alive as well,
There's an appetite there for them. I think people are interested.
There is an appetite, I always say that storytelling, it resonates naturally with us. It's what we've done for thousands of years, told stories in all sorts of forms. And I think the other thing about it is that I actually think it's nearly ingrained in our DNA. It's like, when you start a story, everybody knows, here we go. You mention a dark forest and everybody goes, oh, so it's well marked and people can just really join into it and enjoy it.
Come here, I'll tell you what I'm looking at. I'm conscious of time. We've got 25 minutes left and we've got Jack and the lads here. Did you have a story at all in your head at all? You don't have to either if you don't want to. Do you have
I
something?
have loads of stories in my head.
I was thinking that, yeah.
I'm going to go back to the one I thought I would tell, because there was others came up along there. You were talking about the hair, and there's a great story about a tailor and a hair, and sure, it goes all over the place. But I'm going to stick in Wexford.
Well,
And this is a story a lot of people will know, but I'm going to tell it anyway for people who don't know it. And it's to do with Loftus Hall. And Loftus Hall is down there by the Hook, and you know, you travel down to the Hook in the daytime on a beautiful day and you see the beautiful pictures. It looks gorgeous. But that area is known as the graveyard of 1,000 ships, because so many ships have floundered on the rocks. And long ago, when Loftus Hall was in its heyday, the family who lived there were the Tottinghams. And it's the same Tottingham family that's related to Tottenham Court Road and to the football team. And they loved to have parties. And people would come for the parties. All the rich people would arrive in their finery on their horses. They'd come in, they'd gather in the dining room, the table laden with all the best food that was available at the time. And the one thing that people said when the wind got up on the peninsula, and even today people will say it, it sounds like the voices howling of the sailors who drown out there, calling from their icy grave. And on this night, as everybody gathered, the wind started to get up. And as the wind does, it finds little cracks and it raises up a little screech and people started to shudder. But of course, Tottingham was having none of this. Enough, he said, let the chatter begin and we'll enjoy ourselves. And of course, people did start to enjoy themselves. But then there was a loud knock on the door and everybody froze. And they looked and there was a young man. He was a tall, handsome young man, a bit like the man Liz Weir was describing earlier, with a dark hat and a cape and a stick. And Tottingham looked and said, who's this man? Does anybody know him? And nobody did. But he said, he's a gentleman, he's welcome at the table. And then he came, his hat was taken, and he sat down. Now the thing is, within a short time, everybody was paying attention to the stranger. He had great stories and yarns to tell. And the one person that hung on every word that fell from his rosy red lips was Anne, Tottingham's beautiful daughter. And it was said that she was the most beautiful young woman, not just in Wexford, but the whole of Ireland. But she knew it. And she didn't want to know about any of the young men from the area if they proposed marriage or to dance. The smallest little thing, she would tuck them away. But the stranger was different. Oh, he was handsome, the eyes and the lips, and she sat there listening to every word. And afterwards, people went to different parts of the house, as was the custom. Now, Tottingham loved to play cards and gamble, and he went into the parlour at the front of the house. So too did the stranger, other guests, and Anne trailing behind him. And they sat around that table playing cards and having fun late into the night. And the people who were there that night claimed that around 3 o'clock in the morning, Tottingham stood up, he stretched, and he says, I'm away to my bed. He leaned over and he kissed Anne on the cheek, and off he went up the staircase. And if you've ever been into Loftus Hall, you know the staircase is a beautiful Italian wooden staircase. And he was walking up to the top, and as his foot came to the top step, he suddenly heard a scream, Father! Well, he went running back down the stairs because he knew it was Anne. He burst into the room and everybody sat there with their mouths open, looking up at the roof, the rain pouring in. And he said, what's happened in here? Nobody could speak. And he shook Anne. He said, tell me, what has happened? It was him, she said, pointing to the empty chair. My card fell to the ground. When I bent down to pick it up, I glanced across, and there I saw not the foot of a man, but the cloven hoof of the devil. And with that, everybody had come to hear what was going on. And when they heard those words, they turned on heel and left in the middle of the night. And poor Anne was taken off to her room, and well, she was never again seen in public. It said she died of a broken heart soon after. The family, well, they moved away from the house. They said it was cursed. Indeed, people said the hole in the roof and a black mark on the wall that the devil's hoof left remained and kept coming back. And I remember as a young boy going down to Slade to fish in the autumn or in the August nights, and you'd be coming back looking in, and at the time it was a hotel, and you'd be looking out into the dark hoping that you might see those dark red eyes of the devil, but you'd be praying to God it wasn't him, and we were glad to get home safely. And that's the story.
Right, Joe.
Thank you.
Isn't it funny? Loftus Hall has always amazed me. It's to show you the power of folklore, that it actually can turn the whole thing into just, it's the power. No matter where you go in the country, I'd be in schools like yourselves, Loftus Hall, young lads know the story, you know. Yeah. And even that story is repeated. I've come across that story in a few places. Castletown House in Kildare, there's a house, version to it. But Loftus Hall is the one we've nailed that in Wexford, you know. We've nailed it with the strawberries, you know. Yeah.
I mean, the other ones are common, like Castletown House, but I think Loftus Hall, there's something special about it. There's and the location as well. It's it makes it, you know, it's that out there all on its own. I always remember going back down as an adult to see Loftus Hall and being amazed that actually it was bigger than I remembered it. You know, when you grow up, you think, oh, that place was smaller, but it's an imposing building and it just rises up out of the flat landscape. It's beautiful, beautiful. Great story.
Yeah, there's something in Wexford too. I kind of realised that as I moved away, I kind of realised that that connection to story is really strong. Something we kind of took for granted a little bit. And stronger than other counties I found it in. Listen, I'm going to back over to Mr. Steve Lally here now for a second. Joe, thanks a million for that, and thanks for your time, right? Thanks for waiting.
And Aileen, no bother.
Steve Lally, how are you?
How are you doing? Every time the fairies are after, they test me. They test me. Anyway, I won't, as the fella says, I won't tear the backside of it now. I'll keep her lit. So this story is about a fella who's a spalpeen, itinerant worker, Tom. People love the Spalpeens, great storytellers, but Tom had no story, not one. He'd bore you to tears, couldn't tell you the time of day. Anyway, this was getting very bad because he'd knock on someone's door and they'd say, not today, Tom, but there's a wee woman. And it wasn't long before poor old Tom found himself not able to get work nowhere. And he was in an awful bad way. And sure, he had no money, he had no food, he had nothing to eat. The clothes were falling off him, and you know, he was walking through some class of a field one day, and he says, surely to goodness things can't get any worse, but believe me now, folks, when you've lived as long as I have, you'll find out things do and will always get bloody worse. And as soon as he thought that, the heavens opened up, the rain started pouring down. He says, that's it, I'm finished now, I'm going to freeze. But he saw a wee light in the distance, and he says, with his light there's hope, and he followed the light, and the closer he got, he saw was a wee tilly lamp in the window of a little cottage. And he went up to the cottage and he thought, surely to goodness whoever's in this house will let me in out of the rain, and I hope to goodness they don't ask me to tell a story. So he lifted up his fist, about to knock on the door, but before his fist hit the door opened up, and there was a big tall man there, big tall thin looking boy, you know, with long black hair and a big long beard. He looked like a cross between Rasputin and Nick Cave. And he says, hello, Tom, how are you doing? I've been expecting you. And Tom thought this is very peculiar. He'd never seen this man in his life. He says, come in out of there now, Tom. He says, are you hungry, Tom? And Tom says, oh, I'm starving. And the house was lovely and warm. There was a big fire. There was something bubbling on the grate. And the man says, sit down there now. And he sat down at the table. And as soon as he sat down, a big bowl of stew just appeared out of nowhere, a lump of wheaten bread, a slap of butter, and a cup of buttermilk. And Tom ate it. He'd never had food as nice in all his life. He was used to eating out dry bread and water. And then your man says to him, he says, are you tired, Tom? And Tom says, I'm exhausted. He says, behind that door there now, he says, there's a wee room for you and a bed, go and have a lie down. So Tom got up, he opened the door, and sure enough, there was a wee settled bed, lovely fresh sheets, feather pillows, the whole lot. Never seen luxury like it. He was used to sharing a barn with the pigs, you know, and a few rats thrown in for good measure. And as soon as his head hit the pillow, sure, he fell fast asleep. But there he was sleeping during the night when he felt something poking him in the eye, twisting his ear and pulling his hair. And he looked up, and there was these three boys looking at him, these three ugly wee boys. And they were going, hello, Tom, come on now, Tom, get out of bed, Tom, you're a lazy bones, Tom, now, come on now, Tom. And they were the ugliest looking creatures. One boy, his teeth he had big gaps in his teeth, and he saw a worm crawl out of his mouth, up into his nose, out through his eye, into his ear, and do the same thing over again a few times. And one of them pulled him out of the bed by the hair. He landed on the floor, and there was a great big coffin on the floor. And the boys were getting awful excited, and they started nudging each other, and he says, who will carry the coffin? And they all says, Tom will, Tom will. And they threw the coffin on his back, and they pushed him, and they kicked him out through the door, out into the night, and the wind howling around him, and they brought him to a big graveyard. And there was a big wall around the graveyard, and they made Tom lift the coffin over the wall, and Tom had to climb over the wall behind the coffin. As soon as he'd done that, the three boys walked a few yards this way, opened the gate, and went inside. And then there was a wee plot of land with a shovel, with a shovel in it, and they brought him over to it, and they got excited again, and they says, who will dig the grave? Tom will, come on now, Tom, dig a hole now, Tom, put your back into it, Tom, now, you matter a mouse, Tom, come on now, Tom, come on, Tom. So poor Tom was digging and digging and digging until he found himself in a big hole, and they lifted him out of the hole by the hair of the head, and then the boys started getting awful excited. Oh, big jeepers, were nudging each other and slapping each other on the back, and they says, who will go inside the coffin? Tom will. And they lifted him, they threw him inside the coffin, put the lid on it. Tom was trapped inside the coffin, and he felt the nails being hammered in, tap, 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 tap. And then he heard the muffled voices saying, Who will go inside the grave? Tom will, Tom will. He felt the coffin being lifted up. Down into the hole he went, and he heard the earth being shoveled on top of the coffin. There he was, trapped inside of it. The air was going away from him. He couldn't see the finger in front of his nose. It was so dark, and he was fighting with the lining of the coffin, screaming, help me, help me, help me. I'll do Anthony says, I'll even learn a story. And with that, he found himself not fighting with the lining of the coffin, but the sheets of the bed. Oh, he was delighted. It was all just a bad dream. Well, he lifted off the sheets. He's still in his trousers and his shirt and everything. His boots were still on, covered in mud. Most peculiar. But he got out of the bed and he opened the door, and the guy in black was sitting there singing a song about a fella in Reno he didn't like, so he had to sort him out. And he says, Tom, did you sleep well last night, Tom? And Tom says, oh, be jeepers now. Thanks for the hospitality, but to be honest with you now, I had a queer bad night's sleep. And your man says, oh, that's awful sad, Tom, to hear that now. He says, but tell me something else, Tom. Do you have a story to tell? And Tom says, you know, funny enough, I do. And he started telling the story. And your man jumps up and he takes a big breath and he goes, who will tell us a story? And the three wee feckers came flying down the chimney going, Tom will tell us a story. Come on now, Tom, tell us a story. Three little pigs, anything at all, lass. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, any old rubbish. We love stories. And they jumped on his back and drug him out through the door again. And he hit the ground, did poor Tom. And he thought, that's me, I'm finished. But sure, as soon as he hit the ground, the three creatures disappeared. And I'll tell you another thing, when he looked over his shoulder, the cottage had disappeared too, and all that was left was a ball of mist. But let me tell you, folks, Tom the Spalpeen was never, ever out of work from that day onwards. Everybody wanted to hire him because Tom had the best story that anyone had ever heard. Shinny on scale, August Gura Mila, but there you go now.
Bad Steve. It was like that joke, Steve, years ago as well about the fella who could do nothing on the building site, but he was great crack.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm no skill, but I'm good crack, like.
But he was the opposite. He was a good worker, but he was no crack.
Brilliant. Listen, there's two more people here I've asked, and I'm just looking around the room. I can see that they're here. I can see, where's Jack Lynch gone on me, Hall? Is he still there? Jack. Jack Lynch, can you see me or hear me? Oh, there he is. Wow.
Sorry, Jack.
Sorry, Jack. How are you doing?
Hello, Jack.
Hi, hello, everyone.
I'll mute Steve, not Lally.
Tell people where you are, Jack, at all. Where are you?
Pardon, what?
Where are you at all?
I'm in Dublin. And it's nice to be invited to this gathering. I was going to tell a story that I know you're running short in time.
No, we're okay. We're all grand. Come on.
Well, people were talking about death and death foretold and the bird in the house and all that, you know, things I'd come across. There's a story called The Soul as a Butterfly, and butterflies have an association with people around the time of death as well in many countries. And just a personal story about it. When my mother, got ill towards the end of her life, I moved back into her house to be near her in the nursing home. And at the time that she actually died, a great friend of mine was staying with me that some of the storytellers there would know. Dovie Thomason, she's a Native American storyteller, amazing storyteller. She's Apache Sioux background. She said she didn't want to come to the church because I'd organized, the funeral on this particular day. Because she said in their tradition, they grieved in different ways, very ritualized, very long rituals, and it involved pulling out the hair and all that. And they believe that the person's spirit hangs around for 10 days. So the obsequies last that long. It's one of the terrible things about the present situation where people can't hold the hands of their loved ones when they're dying. It goes back to the trauma of the famine, I think, why it was such a trauma is that people died in ditches and were, buried in pits, and their relations couldn't, But anyway, Dovie said she'd stay in my mother's house in the garden. My mother was great into the gardening, and she would tend the garden and tell her what she knew of me, that I was a chancer maybe, or whatever. Anyway, afterwards, when I came back, she said she spent the whole afternoon in the garden, and while she was there, all that time, a white butterfly, cabbage butterfly, had circled her and had stayed with her, you know. So that had great resonances for me, you know. Anyway, this story, there's several Irish versions, two from the Blaskets, Muireann O'Sullivan, who wrote 20 Years of Growing, he had a version of it, and Peg Sayers, who, despite what some people who had to deal with her autobiography at school, think she was an amazing, huge collection of her stories and all that. I've heard a version from Duncan Williamson, the great Scottish traveller, but mine is closest to Peg. So will I give it a bang? I hope I come in on time. It's summertime. There's a heat haze on the valley, and two shepherds are lying in the long grass of a field on the side of a hill. It's a field that slopes down to where a river runs at the bottom of the hill. Now it's noon, terribly hot. The sun is hanging high in the sky, and one of the shepherds falls asleep. He's lying flat on his back there in the grass. His mouth is open and he's snoring away goodo. Well, his friend, he's propped himself up on his elbow, and he's smoking his pipe, the Yarrick Shea Fipa, as we say, Australia. And the sun is getting to him as well. He's feeling drowsy and his eyelids drop. And with his eyes closed, he hears a series of sounds. He hears the sound of a bee motoring by. He hears the sound of the sheep further up on the hill. He hears the sound of the river chuckling at the bottom of the hill, chuckling over the stones. And the other sound he hears is the sound of his friend snoring. So he looks down at the friend and he sees an amazing thing. Out of the sleeping man's mouth comes a white butterfly and perches on the man's cheek. He can't believe this. He can't believe what he's seeing. And just then the butterfly takes off, flutters up a bit and lands on the sleeping man's boot. And then it sets off down the hill, and it's following a little boring, a little track with hedgerows on either side. So the man puts down his pipe and he gets up and he follows the butterfly down the hill. When he gets to the river, he sees the butterfly there, just perched on the riverbank. Now there are stepping stones across this river, and as the shepherd watches, the butterfly takes off again and lands on one of the stepping stones. And then after some time, takes off and lands on another one, and finally crosses the river and disappears behind a big bank of rushes and sedge, bulrushes and that, reeds. So the shepherd follows by the stepping stones and he begins to search for the butterfly. He gets through the bank of bulrushes and he finds himself looking at a big meadow. And in the distance, he can see the butterfly. So he heads in that direction. When he gets to the corner of the meadow, he sees the butterfly has landed. And it's landed on an old horse's skull that's lying there in the long grass. And this skull must have been there for several years. It had been bleached white by the weather, the seasons, and the snow and the rain and that. And the butterfly is perched on the forehead of this old horse's skull. And as the man watches, the butterfly goes in through the empty eye socket. So now this butterfly is inside the horse's skull. After some time, it comes out through the other eye socket and begins to flutter back towards the river. The man follows, and once more, the butterfly crosses by the stepping stones. And the man follows, and then the butterfly is heading off up the hill, and you can probably guess where it's going. But it lands on the sleeping man, makes its way to his chin, and then goes straight into the man's open mouth. And as soon as that happens, the man shuts his mouth, sits up, rubs his eyes, and says to his friend, "I've had the most amazing dream." "Well," says his friend, "you may have had an amazing dream, but while you slept and while you snored, I saw the most amazing thing." "Oh, I have to tell you about my dream." "Okay, tell me about your dream." So the man says, "Well, in this dream, I found myself going down a very wide road with enormous trees lining it on either side. And I finally arrived at a beach. And I looked out across the ocean, and there on the horizon I saw an island. I found I could fly, so I flew to that island. And then I see another island further off on the horizon, and I flew to that one and to another one. And I finally landed in a strange foreign country with jungles and forests. So I went through the jungles, and then I find I'm flying over a vast prairie, and down below me I see a beautiful white marble palace. So I landed and I walked into that palace, and I walked from room to room. All the rooms were empty, but there was a pure whiteness to everything. And I never felt as peaceful as I did inside that white marble palace. And then suddenly I began to feel hungry, and I thought, time to go home for the dinner. And I woke up. What do you think of that dream? Well, says his friend, that indeed was an amazing dream. But let me tell you what I saw while you slept and while you snored your way through the dream. So he brings his friend down by the little track, brings him down to the river bank, and he says, these stepping stones are the islands in the ocean that you went by. Come with me. He brings them across by the stepping stones. They go through the bank of bulrushes, and he brings them to the corner of the meadow, and he points down and he says, and this old horse's skull, this is your white marble palace. Two men had seen wondrous things. Which one was the most wondrous? And that's where the story ends. And in Ireland, it's called The Soul as a Butterfly. It was collected in 1943. But we know that it's what we call a universal tale in a way, because the first recorded version of it, the first written down version of it, was written down in the year 787 AD. And that wasn't yesterday, nor the week before last. And it's known as the Guntram legend. It's from one of the French principalities of that time. So that's the story. And I don't have time to tell a tiny little Newfoundland reminiscence, do I? Do you have to finish at half?
No, you're grand. Go on.
Okay, just one thing I wanted to say. I mean, apart from the occasion, because you were saying that this is an early version of the Bealtaine Festival Arts for the Elderly. It's just dreadful to hear today about the crisis in the nursing homes here and in England and Scotland and that. But and it's great to see people from Newfoundland here, particularly Marnie Parsons. Hi there, Marnie. Lovely to see you. Myself and Len Graham, the great singer, he's a performing partner of mine for a long time now. And on a trip to Newfoundland, it was my second time there, Marnie and Chris Brooks organised on either side of the Storytelling Festival a week for us, to tour and play in various clubs throughout the island and that. And one night we were in Rain News, Kenneth, and before telling a story, I said, it's a great honor to be here in Rain News because I know about 6 or 10 miles away from this little village is a place called Harbour Grace. And it was from Harbour Grace that a woman left Newfoundland to travel to Europe. And that woman was, what was her name again? Amelia Earhart. And the story of Amelia Earhart, I pieced together from her account and stuff from the BBC Sound Archive. Seemingly, she's making the first solo attempt to cross the Atlantic. She leaves Harbour Grace, hoping to get to Paris. After about 5 hours in the air, flying against terrible storms and everything icing up, she realizes she must be over Europe. She comes down under the cloud cover, sees green fields, with stone walls around these fields. So she knows where she is, or she can imagine where she is. She's actually over County Derry, outside the city. She finds the longest, safest field to try and land in, and she does that. It's really urgent now because she felt a drip down the back of her neck, and she looked up and there was a fuel pipe over her head in the cockpit leaking, and it was running down her back inside her overalls. She manages to land. and she lands safely. And there's a man walking along a laneway by the side of this field, and he sees her, and he climbs over the wall and saunters up to the plane. The first thing she said to him, according to herself, was, "Put out that cigarette." Anyway, she says, he says to her, "Have you, I won't try a Derry accent, have you come far?" And she laughs and she says, "I have actually, I've come from North America." And she says, "Could you tell me where I am?" And he says, "Where are you?" "You're in Mikey Gallagher's top field. That's where you are." So just like the collection here, it's a local story, and the local, you know, is universal. And it's great hearing all the conversation there.
Yeah,
Really.
those conversations are important too, Jack, because sometimes we can, I see it within traditional singing as well, you can have wall-to-wall songs and there's no space for conversations or people, you know. I think listeners are important as well as...
Oh, sure.
Yeah, yeah.
And everybody has something to say or to chip in or to sing or to tell, and that's
yeah.
so.
I can't help, Jack, but think of, there's a Derry man called Vincent Strunks. And I was down in, Vincent is a traditional singer, and I met him over the years, and down in Rosslare a couple of months ago. Vincent, were you telling me about one of your uncles in the Merchant Navy? Was there a great story you were telling me?
Me?
Yeah,
Vincent.
Vincent
Oh,
Strunks.
Vincent, sorry, Vincent.
Probably, yes, hang on. Vincent, what was that story about the brothers or the cousins or something you were telling me?
It was actually my father and my uncle, and my father was on board a ship during the Second World War in the Mediterranean, and there was a boat alongside them that was hit with a torpedo, and they couldn't stop to pick up survivors, but they slowed down, and the cargo nets were thrown over the side of the boat, and they were dragging people out of the water and pulling them up and bringing them. And my father, he reached over and grabbed the boy by the neck, the collar just, and dragged him up, stood him onto the boat, and there he was. That was his brother in the middle of the Mediterranean during the Second World War, you know. And well, the whole family's all seamen, you know. But actually, my grandmother, that's my father's mother, she was a woman locally from around the Bogside, Brandywell area. Whenever somebody died in the house, died there, my granny was the first person they sent for to wash the body, and that was she was known as doing. And she told me herself, and this woman, she's not a tall storyteller, because she fought in the Black and Tan War, becoming a man and everything, and she told me that she heard the Banshee from a man was dying down the street, and she heard the Banshee coming for him. And that was all. I believed her. But years afterwards, when my granny died, when she died, the daughter of the man who died down the street, she came up and she was telling me, and I was telling her about the Banshee, and she was telling me, well, she says, your grandmother heard the Banshee the night that my father died. He says, because we come on to tell your granny that my father had died. And she says, I know. She knew he had died because she had heard the Banshee, you know. So I believed her, and I still believe her, you know. But if I can tell another wee short story now about a man, now you don't maybe know this man, but you know of him. It's a man called Sam Starrett. And he was one of the men that co-wrote the song John Condon, the First World War song. Sam co-wrote this. And we were at a festival together in Lublin in Poland. And he told me a story one time about him coming home from Belfast. And it was a bad night. And he was going down the Four Glen Road between Dungiven and Derry. And his car broke down. And he couldn't get her started. Not a being about, couldn't get anybody. Seen a light on the hillside. and he went up a laneway, and he went up under this house and knocked at the door. And the woman of the house and her daughter opened the door and let him in, and they told him about his car and had their phone, and could he phone for help? And he says, no, we don't have a phone. He says, well, that's fair enough then, you know. She says, but she says, sit at the fire for a while and sit. And he sat at the fire and he says, look, I'm going to have to go and try and get help somewhere. So he went back down again and away he went. And he eventually got a lift, which got him back to Derry. The next day, when he went out to get the car sorted, he decided he would go up the lane to where the house was. And he went up the lane and he come to a burnt out house. And there's nobody there. The house was a burnt out shell. But he went inside the house and he went over to the fireboard because his cigarettes and lighter were still sitting on the fireboard of the burnt out house. And he found out later that the house went on fire and the mother and her daughter were burned to death in the house. And that was Sam Starr told me that story over there. And he's not a man for tall stories. That's what he met the mother and her daughter in the house, their ghosts or whatever. And his cigarettes and lighter were still sitting in the burnt out fireplace. And also between Banshees and ghosts was full of them.
Yeah.
So there you are.
Yeah. I couldn't help but think when listening to you, Vinny and Jack there, you're on about with death. I couldn't help this. You were on about Jack earlier on. There's so many people here. I can only speak for what I know here in Wexford. And someone mentioned earlier on as well of a horse. It wouldn't go past the house where someone had passed away. It'd go around the other way. But even people make that decision themselves. I know so many farmers that will, when they're driving their tractor, if there's someone after died in the house, they'll go the long way around rather than driving by the house, you know. Or tractors stopped in the field. That's a common one here in Wexford. Maybe not as much now, but I've heard men saying that during harvest, when you have a little opening to get the harvest cut, and someone would die, it'd stop. Tractors would be stopped. Nothing to be moved, and it'd leave them there until the person was buried.
We used to go out regular out to Tory Island, and there was a man telling myself on Tory Island that you see if they come across a body at sea and their boat, they would not bring the body onto their boat. They would sort of tie it so that and tie it up the side of the boat and would bring it in like that, but they wouldn't put the body on their boat. Yeah. You know, and whenever at one time at the funeral and the burial, all the men turned their back on the graveside. Now, at one of the funerals, so they're still very pagan over there. So they are.
Yeah. I came across it was when the classic stuff, clocks would be stopped, windows open, mirrors turned around, radios turned off, all the classic dead stuff, right, for let the spirit out, that kind of stuff. But one thing I came across in Newfoundland, in Point Lance, was that when someone would pass away, to turn the chairs upside down. Now, I don't know whether Mallory McGrath can hear me, this, or maybe Bev heard this, or Kenneth heard this. Maybe Mallory, because Point Lance is down near a branch. I don't know if she's there. I was told that they used to turn the chairs upside down so that the spirit would have nowhere to rest and would leave the room as soon as the person would die. All the chairs were turned up. And even when they were waking someone, they'd have two chairs and they'd have the coffin laying across it. And as soon as they'd lift the coffin up, the men would kick the chairs over so that the spirit would have nothing to rest on. Even to this day, which always amazes me, is the main street of Gorey. To this day, when a funeral goes down the main street of Gorey in County Wexford, it will stop at every cross for a few seconds. Every crossroads all the way down. And that was common in Wexford. It was always the last cross before the graveyard. Even in Kylenear, the last cross before the graveyard, they would stop and say a prayer. There's a tree in the middle of it. Up near Palace was the same. Down in Kilmore was the same. Where there's crosses down in Kilmore. That was always done. I was thinking of that. I was thinking another one, Jack. Did you hear this? Maybe Liz, we'll end up soon. Did you hear the one, Jack, down here? I came across it in Wexford and in Kerry, of someone wearing the clothes. Say a woman's son passed away, and he might be young. She would go and ask a neighbour and son to put on his clothes and wear them for a few days or for a few weeks, and even to wear them around the house 3 times. Did you ever hear anything like that?
I never did. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I never did. But you know, it sounds like, you know, a number of things, you know, I have heard here and elsewhere. I know there's in the Caribbean, their Halloween, their version of it is called Duppy Night, and the people dress backwards. You know, they wear their clothes backwards to confuse the Duppy, who is the evil spirit on that. You know, something occurred to me there when you were just talking a while ago, and it's sort of gone out of my head. But that happens all the time to me these days. What was the last thing you were talking about? Just with your last.
The funeral crop, the stopping at the crop.
Oh yes, well I know what it was. There is there's one. It's very common in the Irish vernacular, and that is that at a funeral in the graveyard, the last person to leave the graveyard is the next person to die.
Oh.
I'm sure you've heard of that one. A funny story, when we have our Cape Clear storytelling festival every year. It won't happen this year. And Dermot O'Driscoll, who's a great storyteller and one of the organisers, and I just heard, I'm sure you know about it too, Liz, that Dermot's wife just passed away last night. Anyway, Dermot gives a walk, which is the Flora and Fauna walk. He talks about the history of the island and points out where the old cable station was, and there's talk about the various plants there, fuchsia, which must have come from South Africa, and you know, all about the birds, and it's a great place for bird watching. But he starts it off in the graveyard near the harbour, St. Kieran's graveyard. So he'll have a big group of people there, and he'll be telling stories about the herring fleet and, you know, the end of that period of the history of the island, and St. Kieran as well. And for Divilment one year, I was working on something else, but I saw they were still in the graveyard. So I got in to the graveyard, and he says, now we're going to move down to the next spot and I'll have some more stories for you. And I put in a little devilish heckle. I said, Dermot, you forgot to tell them about the tradition, you know, of people leaving the graveyard, and the fact that the first person to leave the graveyard is the next person who's going to die. And nobody would leave, you know, and he was shaking his fist at me, you know.
Isn't superstition's a funny one, all right, Jack, isn't it?
Yeah.
The version we have in Wexford is that the last person in the graveyard, their family has to come and leave a bowl of water at the door, at the gate, so that, because the soul of the last person would be always at that gate, guarding the gate, and then they'd be there until the next person died, and then they'd do it. So a bowl of water would be left. I'm going to come close to the end, and I'm going to, because I'm conscious of people being here. One thing, when you mentioned that thing you mentioned there, Jack, about the people afraid to leave the graveyard because they're afraid their life to leave the graveyard. One thing which always struck me was only for superstition in some ways, it preserves so much of our built heritage, our ras, our ring forts, our standing stones, our holy wells, our holy water founts, our graveyards. Only for the superstition and beliefs around those. They would have been knocked down or bulldozed down. A lot of them would have been bulldozed down probably in the 50s and 60s and 70s. So they had a purpose in a different way. I'm conscious. There's a man here I've been talking to, a man called Bat Burns, and I'm only seeing he's from Kerry, and he's been in the background. Bat was going to tell us a story. I was talking to him earlier on, and I can see Bat Burns. I'm just looking around the screen here, folks. Sorry, bear with me. And he was here on audio for a little while, and I'm not sure if he's there. He's not there now. He's gone. I just want to give him some time. No. Looking around, and he's not there. He's not there. Don't worry. Actually, just before I mention Burns, because it's an unusual surname for us here in Wexford. Liz Burns is the arts officer in Wexford County Council, and we're here because of Liz in the arts department. They've asked us to produce this program as part of the Bealtaine Programme, and as Jack said himself, he said it's the Bealtaine Programme is for the month of May. It's about celebrating creativity with older people, and it's a tough time to be an older person in Ireland right now. There's a lot of worry and fear, and I'm delighted. I'm kind of delighted as a people that we've got so much respect. We have such respect, well, we do anyway, and as I'm sure you do as well, for our older people, our relatives, our neighbours, whatever, that we're making the sacrifice, and it's the small one in the scheme of things, to keep this COVID under control the best we can. Listen, I'm trying to figure out where's Kenneth Wickham's at all gone on me? Is he there? Is he? No. And there's also Sean Doherty is there as well. Yeah. Right. Folks, I think I'm going to unmute you fellas there, and I hope the rest can you hear us. Kenneth, can you hear me? Sean, can you hear me?
Yes,
yes. Yeah, good stuff. Folks, Liz Burns is there. How are you doing, Liz? I can see you now. Yeah.
Hold on now.
We're 15 minutes over time. Listen, I'll tell you what I might do. I might put Aileen Lambert on the spot, actually, when I talk about ghosts and stuff. She'll hate me for this. Listen, this whole evening was an experiment. It was an experiment to bring on professional storytellers like Steve and Jack and Liz, who are doing this as a profession. And if anyone is interested in, you organise events, festivals, will you please contact the lads, either Jack or Steve or Liz, or I'm trying to figure out who else, or Bat, or Joe Brennan as well. All the lads have their own Facebook pages, and there's a storytelling network of Ireland. There's a group, there's a website, and you get all the different storytellers in it, and all the lads' details are there. I'm sure the lads, if they want to put in their own details in the text, they can do as well, so there's no hassle there. And so listen, it was really just a chance to bring us all together and have a bit of an evening like this. Do you want to end, or do you want to carry on for a little while longer? Is okay?
Just one.
Yeah,
I have a meeting in about an hour. That's why I'm asking.
That's why I messed up. What I think is special, and I keep saying this, and I won't keep it. I love the fact that we can get Jack, we can get Steve, we can get Joe, we can get Kenneth, we can get Liz, and we can get all of you, people that we've never met, Sean Doherty down there, and like people we have never met before, to bring him into a room. There's something really, really magic happening here, folks. And go on.
Can I ask you one question? Did you ever hear of a dog keen to conning?
A what?
A dog keen to conning.
No, I didn't know.
A wicked unlucky thing. It's another thing goes with death. Like now, would have been an undertaker used to visit my grandfather very regular. Tom Hennessy, the Bull Hennessy was his nickname. But I remember one day there he was talking about the dogs and how they sense the people, how they get real lethargic and all that. But around here, like, we'd have a word called keen to conning, and 'tis a wicked mournful cry of a dog. And there's after been instances like where our neighbour below, the night he died, whether it was a dog fox or a dog, but there was something keen to conning half the night, a wicked mournful thing, and it to be well known in the older generation here, like the word keen to conning. But if you heard it, you would not forget it, like, you know, to be like to be a real, like, have you ever heard the nature programs there, like the wolves howling, or to be a real mournful, this thing now would put the hair standing on your neck, like, you know.
And it announced death, Sean, did it?
Yeah, to be an unlucky thing, to be someone dead or dying, that the dog would be keen to conning. Yeah.
That's yeah. Keen, say it again for me.
Keen to Conan.
Wow. Isn't it amazing what little words and all are out there still are, like I only put up a word yesterday on Facebook, and there's one man in the audience here came across it, and Aileen's father used to use it, a word called Saragli or Saraglia, and I'm going to unmute Mr. Tobin over here now. You heard that one off, Paul, did you?
It was a great one of my mother's, yeah. But it is a whole, you know, there's a whole Saragli of people at this session here now. There's a whole Saragli of everything, man.
That's
And
a really good
I only,
now.
yeah, a whole Saragli, yeah. I only found out today when I was talking to you and I looked it up in the dictionary. It meant a harem or some kind of a whorehouse or something. Or my poor mother didn't know what she was talking about.
Maybe she did.
Yeah, but sorry, I had to pull you in there because just with that word, right? Yeah. Come here. Where's Sean gone again on me? Sean, do you ever hear any other things like them? I suppose people would have heard things like different signs. Like, did you have any other signs? Like, would you have knocks on the door if someone came, or a cock crowing? Those kind of death signs.
All those things that you said about the butterfly, about the rabbit, all those things with the hair, all those things, they were all signs, and they all went into natural signs that could be proven. Like where we're living now here, if we heard again, I picked it up from my grandfather, the train to be going up through the tunnel at Snow Hill, and if she was screeching going up, he said just the wind is going to go northerly. About 3 days later, you could you could put your house on it, the wind to go northerly. But they studied the wind, and the sky and all that, and like my grandfather went to sea. So all those natural kind of signs and the things about like what had come into bloom and what wouldn't be in bloom, they were all, and we've lost so much of it. And like I think this is a wonderful thing tonight, that like it's all relevant still, because an awful lot of those things like about like the hawthorns and all that stuff, when blooms had come on and the relevance of them, they were all passed down there through the oral tradition. And like we went through a kind of a phase, I suppose, since television came on, that we thought everything that our ancestors passed down was kind of dispensable, and now we got to a stage that if it's not saved, an awful lot of knowledge, it'll be lost. So like talking to Kenneth, like there's so many words that we use here in the Waterford estuary and they use, and like even now we'd have fish wares here that go back really to the Cistercian monks and all that, and there'd be words there like coolalias and robberies and that we'd use in the fishery. But when the fishery is gone, those words won't ever be used again, because people won't even understand like what a towelpin is, you know, and they'd be all common words used every day of the week. And as I say, like the signs, another one was the red-haired woman. Nobody wanted to see a red-haired woman going to fish. Some fellas would go home. There was a neighbour of ours, John Barry, he was a wicked man, cursing and swearing. John saw a red-haired woman, he'd be fucking and blind, and he'd come home, excuse the language, he wouldn't go, you know. And like it is funny, because a lot of these things, especially like with the fishing, an awful lot of the signs, like if you kind of study them uncannily, there was something behind them. They made sense, you know. They proved themselves for some reason. I don't know.
Sean, I noticed whenever down at home here, lads who go fishing, there's funny things to do when they be launching the boat for herring fishing. Ned Kavanagh and Kilmucker just telling me this. They'd go out into the swell and they'd turn around and they'd mark the sign of the cross in the water before they went out. So they go out in the boat and mark it. And when I was down around Branch and here, down around Mallory, can hear me now at all. Mallory McGrath, can you hear me? Or maybe some Kenneth Newfoundland ones, or Bev can do this one. I'll unmute you. I recorded met a man, it was a man, Dennis Nash, down in Branch, his neighbour at Mallory's. And they would, when they were going out the boat out to sea, they'd always go follow the sun, they said. They'd always follow the sun. So when you You heard that? Yeah, you heard that, Kenneth?
I was a fisherman. I used to go to sea for a career, and we had skippers almost break her up and drown her up because of them old foolish superstitions. And I'm not joking with you. There was one fella, what was his name? He was on the Cape Dorset. That's all right. And anyways, I tell you, he wouldn't go whatever way, but he was on that wharf. He would not go until the sun, whatever way the sun was. And how many times, a good skipper, but I tell you, he nearly grounded her. How many times I can't even tell you, just because he was frightened to death. And he blamed it. He didn't do it one time, and we had a little trouble with one of the conveyor belts down the factory. And he blamed it on that. He really believed that was the reason that he didn't, whatever way he was supposed to go out on the sun, he thought that was wrong, and that shagged everything all up.
So go on. We used to carry blessed palm, a stove of a blessed candle, and a bottle of holy water. The nets would be blessed fairly often. Sign of the cross, the nets would be blessed. But the older people really hated fishing on a Sunday. They said there'd be no luck with it, and they just didn't like it. Now, there was times at the herring fishing where it might be blowing the whole week and they'd have to go over Sunday, but they did not like it. They did not like it one little bit. No.
Yeah. And that was the same again in Newfoundland. You've seen that, and in Wexford, if you fish Sunday, you'd be fishing for the week, and you'd fish for 3 weeks. Yeah. And
right back.
We met this man, 90-year-old Dennis Nash in Newfoundland, and in Branch, Mallory. And Dennis says he maybe did a bit of fishing, but he when he drives his car, the wife said he won't fucking turn the car the other way. Even when he's driving his car, he'll follow the car around to follow the tunnel. Yeah, the exact same thing. Yeah. And come here to me, Sean Doherty, when you're there. This couldn't be cross or blessing. Did you use it? You blessed the nets, did you?
Oh, just the holy water go on the nets, yeah. Bless the nets, yeah.
Beverly, will you tell the people here, or any of the Newfoundland people, will you tell about Candlemas Day? What do you do with the wax?
Yeah. What I was just going to tell a second ago, we used to have a blessing at the boats. The priest would go down to the wharf and he'd do the blessing of the boats before the fishing season, you know?
Yeah, that's still here, common here as well. Did you do did you drop the wax? Mallory, did you drop the wax?
Yes,
we did in the guns.
Oh yes, my husband here. Speak up.
We we did in Candlemas Day. We'd get when they bring home the candles, we'd take the piece out of the gun, the back piece out of the gun, and we'd drip the candle into the gun and put the piece back on, and a piece of palm. We always put a piece of palm aboard the boat.
Yeah.
I fished all my life, and we always put a piece of palm up in the bow of the boat. And you'd never ever turn a hatch bottom up. If you turned the hatch bottom up, you'd never go out that day. The hatch had to be face down, the same as it was if it was on the boat, you know.
Yeah. Mick, I just had a question that if anybody else called fairies the Micheleens. That's what my people. Micheleens will get you. Yeah. You had to put your bread or your whatever so that the Micheleens wouldn't get you.
I've heard it, but not only read about it. Never came across it from anyone. Did you hear it, Sean?
Some of them are from Woodbay, and part of the East Coast Trail is called the Micheleen Trail. So maybe it comes from that area. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, this village like it'd be notorious for nicknames, you know. And there was a man here. He was called Micheleen, and like there were. Like some of the times, like the nicknames, you'd say, where did they get them? But where did these nicknames get taught up out of? But when you look into it, their grandfather was probably called Micheleen as well. And then to go into, they'd be the Micheleens, you know, that the whole family would be called, like I'm a Doherty, there's 5 or 6 families of Dohertys here, and our family nickname would be Hopses. But yet, I'd have other nicknames then, as well as my first name. So like that was the whole thing. There'd be nicknames all over the shop. But Micheleen now was a fairly common one around here.
Yeah. One thing, Sean, which we noticed in Newfoundland, when there was so many one name, you know, so many Powers, so many Englishes, so many Nashes, the exact same as here, there'll be so many Redmonds in one village. The naming systems changed when we all got new. So you'd have Marys and Catherines and Bridgets, right? So it'd be Mary Pat. So there'd be so many Mary Redmonds. She'd take on her husband's name. So it'd be Mary Pat Redmond, Mary John Redmond, Mary Tom Redmond. And that's the same. And sure, Kenneth and Mallory are the same, used the same thing too. And it was when there was a shortage of those classic Catholic names, first names, the Elizabeths, the Bridie's, then we all started getting fancy names like Madonna's and Cheryl's, all those kind of things. Yeah, but that happens. That still happens in the traveling community in Ireland still, because a lot of the first son takes on the name of the grandfather. So there's a lot of Jerrys. In Wexford, Jerry would be a very popular name. So you'd have a lot of Jerry Connors, Jerry Cash, and that name would be passed on. So then you'd have a wife then would be Mary's Jerry or Red Mary's Jerry, or and that's common still. Listen, I think we should let you go home, right? I know you are home, right? But we're speaking of ghosts and stuff. Do you want to sing that song?
Oh, sure will be fine.
She will.
He wants me to sing a song now to clear the room. Isn't that a lovely message you sent out to me?
Oh, yeah. I'll pay for this, lads.
But in the traditional repertoire, there is a type of song that's often known as a night visiting song, right? And let's see. Now, it doesn't relate to the kind of night visiting that this is similar to, as in getting together at night time to tell a few yarns and that. This was night visiting of a different sort. It's a visit from a ghostly lover. And so one of the great songs, which was collected by, it's one of the child ballads. Your man, the collector, Professor, what was his name again?
Francis Child.
Oh, Francis Child.
Yeah.
He never came to Ireland, but this one was sung. This was sung here. Have you a glass of water?
I do.
Just leave it there. Yeah. Let me see. So this is known as the Holland Handkerchief. A wealthy squire lived in our town, and he's a man of high renown. He had one daughter, a beauty bright, and the name he called her was his heart's delight. Now many young men for to court her came, but none of them could her favour gain, till there came a lad of a low degree, and above them all she did fancy. But when her father he came to know that his daughter loved this young man so, over 50 miles he sent her away, all for to deprive them of their wedding day. One night as she lay in her bedroom, her love he appeared from out of the gloom. He touched her hand and to her did say, "Arise, my darling, and come away." With her true love she got on behind, and they rode faster than any wind. They rode all along for an hour or more, till he cries, "My darling, my head feels sore." A Holland handkerchief he then took out, and with it she wrapped his aching head about. She kissed his lips and to him did say, "My love, you are colder than any clay." When they arrived at her father's gate, he said, "Get down, love, for 'tis getting late." Get down and go into bed, and I'll see that your horse is both groomed and fed. And when she arrived at her father's hall, who's there, her own father did call. 'Tis I, dearest father, did you send for me by such a messenger, and naming he? Oh no, dear daughter, that cannot be. Your words are false and you lie to me. For on yon far mountain your young man died, and in yon green meadow his body lies. The truth it then dawned on this lady brave, and with her friends they exposed the grave where lay her love, though 9 months dead, with a holland handkerchief around his head. So work that one out.
I know.
Yeah, there it was. Wrapped around his head.
How did it happen?
Don't know.
Ghostly. Lads, come here. I'm going to. Thanks a million for your time, and thanks a million for joining us. I'm going to unmute you all for a second to say hello and goodbye to you. This could be messy.
You're all.
That was excellent. Thank you.
Well done, guys. Well done.
Lovely to see you all.
Hi, see you folks. Good to see you all.
Good night. Next Thursday, we're doing. I'm going to mute you again. Next Thursday we're doing a night of recitation, and there will be some songs as well, and we've got one more go after that then. So listen, thanks a million for coming. It'll be a different password, so text us for the new password. We have to keep changing the password to keep on top of security. It's the only way we keep out unwanted people. It's the best way. So
and thanks again to the Arts Department in Wexford County Council. Liz was on earlier on for the most part of it.
So thanks to Kenneth, thanks to Joe Brennan, thanks to Steve Lally, thanks to
Liz
Weir and Jack, and to Bat who wasn't there. And thanks to you for joining in and all the people who joined in. And so we'll see you again next week, hopefully, will we? Oh, actually, brilliant. Before I forget, we're doing, because we've got 3 little girls and we have to get them to bed, right? On Sunday, we're doing a singing session for children, a family-friendly singing session. So again, it's password. I'll text us for the password. I won't say it here because this will be pre-recorded, right? So text me for the password. And if you've got any relatives or sons or daughters or grown grandchildren who'd like to come along, and we're going to try to let the kids kind of run it themselves. We'll be in the background a bit. So that's on at 3 o'clock on Sunday, and that's called, what's it called, Aileen?
Children's singing session, something like that.
Children's singing session.
Fairly straightforward, like.
Very straightforward, yeah.
But you'll find it on wherever you come across the login sessions. On Michael's mixed page, Michael Fortune, Folklore.ie, or Aileen Lambert, I think.
Yeah.
We set it up through.
Yeah. That's lovely.
Hope to see you again soon.
Take care of yourself,
all right.
won't you?
Good night, folks.
So long. Good night. Thanks, everyone.